Hi, everyone. My name is Jason,
And my name is Sarah.
and this is Posture. We have dozens of years working with clients and directly in companies doing product marketing and product strategy. And we help companies like yours and collaborate with product marketers to do just the same across the spectrum, across industries. One of the things that we feel the most passionate about, and the reason we call this posture, is we believe that the stance you take in the market, how you stand in relation to your clients, how you're interacting in the communities you do business, how you are reacting or not reacting to competitors, your posture towards the market is far more important than that one singular stance, that position that you're going to hold. Are you standing at the race clapping for someone, or are you standing at the race with your feet in the blocks, ready to go? And that's what posture is all about. Today we have a very exciting uh, agenda. We are going to be digging into one of the most important tools that we use when putting together a go-to-market strategy and communicating out the value propositions and the messaging to the team. So we're going to talk a little bit about our messaging architecture, what it is, and how you'd build one yourself. And we have a couple other things that we're pretty excited about as well. Sarah?
So, for our first segment of the day, it is Make It Make Sense. And I'm going to go into our inbox for this one because I think we have the perfect question that is appropriate for the topic, which is messaging architecture. And that is, when thinking about positioning, what are some good ways to evaluate my competitor in comparison to my own? Which is a perfect question for how we posture approach uh, this topic. Um, do you want to elaborate on that, Jason?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. And thank you for the question world. Yeah, it's interesting. So there are a number of different ways that you can go about kind of evaluating, like, is this a good position or not, and how are people doing this. Obviously there's things like big segmentation surveys or customer attitude, MPS, um, social media monitoring. You can listen in lots of different ways um, to your customers, and should. If you're thinking specifically about your relationship to competitors and the landscape itself, one of the things we like to do is what we call the 3D framework, which one of the things you'll learn is we just love scoring stuff. So we came up
Yeah,
with a
me
way to,
too.
to score a competitor's positioning and then compare it to each other. It's like quantifying the unquantifiable. But
Hmm.
regardless, there's three criteria that when we're looking at a positioning, particularly as it relates to brand, we kind of say, hey, is this something that works? The first one is distinctiveness. Uh, this may be a no-brainer. We want to all kind of go out there and say we're unique or demonstrate something that's unique in the world, but that's the reality is it's not often the case. A lot of times there actually are competitors that will very intentionally and specifically copy the positioning and just be a detractor brand from other major players in the market. And there is a lot of legitimacy to that strategy. But if we were going to score the first thing, we would have to ask ourselves, how unique is that positioning to take? Is this something where they're occupying a space in the market no one else is, um, or are they just kind of a me too? And some in some ways it can be really beneficial, and to drive that distinctiveness. So that's the first thing we look at. Um, Kind of the second one, and actually I think this is even more important than just being distinctive, it's defensible. Is it, can you reasonably go out and make the claim and back it up? And when Sarah says this kind of fits perfectly into the messaging architecture, we'll talk about reasons to believe. The defensibility of your positioning really comes down to, do I have credibility? And do I have receipts? And there's a lot of ways you can gain those couple of things. You can do it literally in terms of the features that are in your product. You can do it again based on customer feedback, CSAT, quotes, that kind of stuff, or awards, traffic. You can show it in a lot of different ways, but you have to be able to defend that position. If you're going to go out there and say we sell the best widgets, then you have to have some ability to prove it, so that your potential buyers like hear that as being a credible claim, and you can defend
Mm-hmm.
that. The second piece of defensibility is that it ain't going away. Saying that you are the only provider of this AI solution in this very niche market isn't going to be very defensible. Like, this is something that over the history of time, with the progress of technology in that sector, there's going to be no defending that space. So why would you invest tons of money in a positioning that puts you squarely in that space? And then when, as is the natural course of all things AI at this point, when a million other competitors or players emerge to compete against you, you can no longer say, I'm the only AI solution in this very niche space, because there's about 20 other, and they all look about the same, and they're all very snappy and fun to play with. So, but that's defensibility. Can you reasonably stand behind the claim? And is this going to be one that if you invest in, it's going to stand with you, it's going to last, and it's not just going to disappear tomorrow?
Right.
So those are two of them: distinctiveness and defensibility. And the third one is really just about drivers, and by that I mean sales drivers or purchasing drivers. Are these positioning claims that you're making, is that position in the market, first of all, a place that people are going to buy something? Are they attracted to something like that? But also, are you saying things or driving ideas home that your buyers, that are going to engage your buyers and make them want to buy your product? If you can not convince your buyers to purchase, then defensibility and distinctiveness just doesn't matter at all. So you can say that one, if we were to score everything out and say, okay, well, 1 point for distinctiveness, 1 point for defensibility, about 5 points for drivers, and whether or not this is going to be a positioning that really sells you on your potential clients. So we love looking at this particular topic, and those are kind of the three most important criteria for us. And as I said, probably in a future podcast, what we'll do is walk through how we score it and how we might evaluate that with a particular client. But I appreciate this question, because it really does come down to, when you compare your own positioning to someone else in the market, you really have to be thinking about those three criteria. Otherwise, what you're either going to come up with is a Me Too that goes away tomorrow and no one cares about, or you may just come up with something that is a little bit lackluster and hits on all three of those things good enough, but is not going to be something you can grow your business with. So that's the way I'd answer that question, Sarah.
Well, I also think it's important to realize that your distinctiveness, defensibility, and your drivers also help clarify what your competitors are not saying, that white space, and it anchors your messaging. It fills in the questions you may have about, or your buyer might have about your competitor, and really drives home your messaging.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Okay. So your messaging architecture. Let's get to the topic of the day. I personally, I love the messaging part of it. I really feel like it plays with psychology a little bit, and the way people think, and personally, that's a big interest of mine, and how can you say things that make it meaningful, that motivate people, and your architecture, your messaging architecture, really has to strike a chord, and really has to drive home what you the main point about what you want your audience to know about your product.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And also aligns with what people really care about in an authentic way, and not just a superficial way.
That's right. That's right. Actually, like nailing them where they. That I don't know how I'm going to complete that analogy. Yeah, it's funny, because when we first started to look at messaging and kind of this idea of an architecture, really came out of like political organizing. It's going to seem completely weird, but I started my career doing political organizing and working with various community groups on campaigns in which many languages were spoken. Sometimes we ran campaigns in which there were 14 languages spoken and sometimes, 20 or 30. I mean, a lot of different languages. And the thing that always frustrated me was we would spend all of our time crafting this really beautiful messaging sheet, and it would have all the right words, and it would be crafted in a really gentle or persuasive way for a certain audience that we were pretty intentional about. And then, we would send it to a translator, or we'd have one of the organizers translate it. And it would come back and we translate it back into English, and it would be nothing even close to those very specific words that I came up with. They would be like, on the golden shining path of happiness, we found ourselves in and you'd be like, what? Golden shining path of happiness has nothing to do with what we're trying to achieve. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the nuance of language. There's the nuance of rhetoric and of idiomatic speech and all this other stuff that gets in the way a lot of times. And I say it's kind of funny to think about it, think about messaging in that context, because it does inform kind of how we think about messaging, in the sense that a lot of people in our client companies, in our company, a lot of people I've worked with over the years speak different languages. Like literally a salesperson might say things in a way that's so profoundly different. And as a product marketer, if I'm crafting those perfectly phrased message points and all this other stuff, I'm going to get really frustrated when that top performing salesperson goes and takes a look at this message sheet, throws it away, and then just says whatever the hell they want. And you're like, it's not even a question of being on brand. It's like, you're no longer selling the product. You're saying all sorts of crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we landed on this idea of, creating a messaging architecture first. Because what we want to make sure is that the value propositions, the competitive advantages, the reasons to believe, those positioning pillars, and all of these statements are captured, are communicated to the team, be they the B2B sales people or the internal advocates on the customer service team or whatever. Whoever those people are, we want them to understand the core points and be able to communicate those core points, but realistically say them in a way that their stakeholders can hear them. The existing customer that's struggling with a new feature, the new prospect that you're trying to land and doing a discovery call, we want you to hit on all the major points in your own words and in a way that your client or customer or prospect can hear.
Right.
And so that's what we came up with.
It's not about what you say. It's about why you say it and who are you saying it to consistently.
Consistently across a spectrum of talkers. The reality is you're going to have to do messaging points as well. You're going to have to do a pitch deck, and you're going to write those, and you're going to craft those. There's going to be a lot of leave behind material that's got the core messaging that you're going to craft. But this is a good starting point. It's a good starting point for the broader team. And as you're beginning to develop those other messaging pieces you roll out, it becomes a reference point back for you in terms of what you can do.
Yeah, it lays down the essentials and it's the fuel. So the sales team might be driving the car, but you've provided them the fuel and you've built that engine, and it's up to them to drive that car in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a good fuel too. Hopefully you create a high performance, clean energy source. It's a clean energy source. Yeah. Anyways. Okay. So we do have, as I started to say, we do have a couple of slides here that I want to just show. So it's a little more concrete. We've been talking idioms and we've been talking about fuel and analogies. So I want to show you concretely what we're talking about. We will make these available to you so that you can download them and work through them on your own. You can use them as a worksheet. So we'll do that. The first one here, and I'll kind of walk through like what these pieces are and then give you an example so that we can kind of reference that and talk about how it all came together. But this is what it looks like. I mean, in a lot of ways, it just looks like a decision tree. And you can think about it as being a kind of a house that's built on a foundation and then layers up to the value claims of the overall product itself. Even though ultimately when you roll it out and how you message it is probably going to be top down. And so at the top is whatever the product or the feature is that you're using, that you're going to roll out and message. And then at the bottom are those reasons to believe. That purple little band there are all the things that we've been talking about. We'll get into that in a second. Sorry, Sarah.
And what this, well, what I this really helps you lay the foundations for are your sales decks, your email campaigns, your founder narratives, your landing pages, product launch communications. Like this is this is what we're talking about being the foundation of all of those things that you use your messaging in.
Yep, that's very true. And hopefully people use it. So the first thing I want to highlight, and the other thing is we love like fuchsia pink, so we're going to use that as much as we can.
And purple.
And purple, yeah, exactly. All shades of purple. The first kind of layer there, and below the product itself, and sometimes you may want to put an overarching product claim, or if you have some kind of a brand statement that you feel like this needs to sit under. A lot of times when we're working with a team, particularly the brand team, has a brand statement or a brand hierarchy that they've put together. And so to show how that first product layer fits in with the company positioning or the brand statements can help you drive, a lot of times, consolidate support within the organization.
And it helps keep every message on brand and on purpose. No matter who you're talking to, no matter who's using it, it is on brand and it is on purpose. On purpose.
I like that. Okay, so the first layer there is the positioning pillars. It currently says audience 1, 2, and 3, but the reason we put that in there actually was because the first couple of things are going to be your statements about the position you're going to look at in the market, but divided up by audiences. And I'm not talking specifically about segments. Though a segment or your target buyer is certainly one of your audiences, you may also choose to build into that other buyer types, people who are part of the consideration cycle, internal stakeholders, the board of directors. Depending on who your stakeholders are, you may want value pillars. You may want to have an audience and a messaging distinct to them. As I mentioned, we've done some things in ed tech. In a K-12 district, that superintendent is going to be one of your audiences. There, they may be the person who actually does the purchasing. The principal may also be a audience. Sorry, had a brain freeze. The principal of the school may also be an audience. That person could be part of the consideration cycle, or could be a decision maker. And that's something that you need to keep in mind with that audience. And then maybe you have a bunch of folks who are engaged or can influence the process: parents, teachers, the child themselves. The same is true, obviously, with corporations. Corporations have multiple different stakeholders. There's partners, there's affiliate channels, there's their actual direct, maybe B2B or B2C clients, those who are reviewing the product and the press and the media. These are audiences. And so you may want to have specific messaging or value claims that you're putting out to those audiences. That is not to say that it's, you're saying one thing over here and saying something completely different over here. They're going to be nuances to that messaging, or maybe there's value claims or things that particular audience wants to hear more about than, say, another one. And so that's what we're thinking about around that. And in terms of positioning pillars themselves, this is really the core claim that you're going to make about that product and how it addresses the pain points of your buyer. And the thing is, we like to put it into positioning. We like to put it into statements or questions that help reframe. So put it in the words of a quote that puts it in the words of that particular audience. So that's the other piece of it. I want to feel this way about the solution that I need, and I want to be able to do it within this particular time frame. Or I'm struggling in these ways to meet these things, these needs for my business, and this customer or this product will help me do that.
Yeah.
So those are
And
the types of positioning claims.
and it's what each audience type actually values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
The second layer down is even more directly about that. It's the value position. And so when it comes down to this, the inputs for this might be your competitive information, the studies that you've done about buyers and what motivates their purchase, what are the things that are important to them, pricing studies, conversations, one-on-ones. So there's a lot of different ways that you can figure out what it is that your buyers perceive as valuable. Is it high quality? Is it fast? Is it efficient? Is it inexpensive? Is it expensive? And these are the value propositions that you have, and what is the problem that they're trying to solve. And so you kind of have two things here. One is, again, some kind of statement about the ultimate goal for that audience. I want to be able to have my teachers and the students increase reading scores by X and such amount, or I want to be able to have my employees collaborate more powerfully when they're taking on creative tasks. These are the kinds of ultimate goals that they might have. And then you come up with a description of how your product meets that goal. So if you've identified this as an audience and you know to some degree what you're positioning as it relates to that client, this step is then about connecting the dots between what they value, what they're looking for, and what you provide in terms of that that value proposition.
Yes, and each one is tailored and differentiated to each persona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. The next one is, we've talked about competitive landscapes. Certainly, it's going to be something that is close to Sarah and my heart. So we end up talking about different players in the market and how you understand who they are a lot. That work in particular is going to inform the next layer, which is the competitive advantage. You've now moved from aspirational goal at the top of this architecture down into something that's even more concrete. You're getting close to decision point and proof points. And this competitive advantage is the reason that they should be choosing you to do the things that they value, or why you can reinforce that positioning better than your competitors. And again, that can hit on any number of things. It's really important for you to very honestly go through and take a look at your strengths and weaknesses and those of your competitors, because this is where it comes in. You want to something Sarah said a second ago, you want to be able to drive a distinct competitive advantage. You want to be able to be well differentiated in terms of how you're talking about it. So when you go to talk about that value proposition, you don't want to be going into something that every single competitor says, and the buyer knows it because they've heard it, and does nothing to prove out why you're the solution that should be
Right.
purchased. And that's what the competitive advantage is really all about. And so we list them here again, according to each audience.
But it's not just a laundry list of features and benefits. Like, this is your ownable space. This is the direct advantage you have over your competitors, and not necessarily worded in a way that's, oh, we're better than them because we do this and they don't. This is about your product, your advantage, and indirectly says what they don't have. It's not necessarily something you say that your competitor doesn't have. You just own that space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is going to be something, to Sarah's point. It's ownable. You want to infuse that differentiation and competitive advantage kind of throughout your messaging. There may be points in which you do decide to do little snippets that are things the sales team or the marketing team can use that are like a shot across the bow for this particular competitor. If there is a competitor that is just completely dominating the market, maybe you do have to directly take them on. But generally speaking, being able to differentiate from them and put that in there, seed it, make sure the reason we seed it under value proposition and under the positioning pillars for the audience is because the reality is, to some degree, as Sarah was kind of saying, that could be the lead punch. We're better than that, but you haven't connected to the buyer and their needs first. And that's what's the most important one, is start with buyer needs, start with the connection, and then you can get onto the nuance of why you're the best one in the market. The last row on our marketing architecture is the reasons to believe. And this is, to Sarah's point, the competitive advantage isn't your laundry list of your features and everything you're great for. The reasons to believe are. This is where you actually put the concrete things, those features. We always talk about benefits and features. The vast majority of this messaging architecture is very benefits driven. This is why it matters. This is why it's good for you. This is the value you're going to get from the product. The reasons to believe are the screen captures, or they're the little things that you're going to point to that prove out the rest of the statements.
It's the science.
It's the science, yeah. In the storytelling and science, this is the science of it. And it's funny because it's not just features. I mean, you're going to want to, if you're doing a new product release, maybe there's a lot of product introduction you have to do. If you're doing a product update, maybe there's one or two really cool features you want to really hit on. This can be any number of proof points. It could be studies that were done about your product. It could be social reviews. It could be awards that you got. It could be news articles. It could be client statements and quotes and stuff that you put on your website. Or it actually could be video of the product itself and how that features work. So there's a lot to think about. Don't limit yourself to the specific features. We've talked about, or Sarah and I were talking about earlier today, a former client who they did smart laboratory equipment. And the thing was, one of their major audiences was in fact the scientific community. And it was very hard because it had to do with a lot of scientific papers. It had to do with a lot of giant kind of wall-sized posters and 8-point font talking to you about the science. But the reality is that's what the audience needed. That's how they were going to communicate to it. And those assets, the how-tos that it worked out, the scientific papers, the studies that were done, were the receipts, or were the reasons to believe, as much as anyone else's, Tabby Awards or those kinds of things. Like there's a lot of different numbers of RFPs that you want, or logos on your website about the big clients that you've got. Those are all reasons to believe. So make sure that they're on your messaging architecture, because as your sales team or as the marketing team rolls down through their conversations with their buyers and they're hitting on all these points, from positioning to value proposition to competitive advantage, they want to point to the reasons to believe that actually reinforces the competitive advantage, or actually reinforces that value claim. So some of the features, all the features, you decide. Some of the awards, hopefully all of the awards, but you get to decide that too. And you want your people to be talking about that.
Yes.
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 Anything else you want to add about that?
Well, this entire process with messaging infrastructure, it also keeps your story intact. So it's not just the science, it's not just the proof points. It keeps it intact, whether you're talking to an investor, a customer, a candidate. The message is on brand, on purpose, and ready to scale, no matter what team is using it, no matter what each team is using it for. It's rooted in something intentional.
Yeah. And you can also guarantee that, say, for example, we've worked with very multiple national teams, someone in Thailand, someone in Spain, and someone in Berlin. They're all on message, regardless of the cultural nuance or ways in which they communicate or need to in order to create relationships with your buyers. They understand the product, they understand the hierarchy, and you trust in them as professionals to say it in the way that your buyer needs to say it.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to hit, your buyer needs to hear it. The last thing I wanted to touch on was kind of the way to approach it. When you look at this messaging architecture, you're like, oh my God, this is like this giant thing they want me to fill out. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something you workshop over the course of, whatever the go-to-market life cycle is. If you've got a year to plan it or a couple of weeks to plan it, you work through it as you go, as you learn. You can always update it. You may roll it out at sales kickoff or something like that, and then come back and revise it. The other piece of it is that you take it an audience at a time. And so, rather than filling it out, I went through it row by row so you could see, okay, this is what the position pillars are and where they sit. But if you do it column by column, that helps you think specifically about the needs of that buyer. And so that's what we recommend. We have kind of the standard, try and come up with 3 audiences, but we've had some that have one audience. Really, truly, that's who they were going to message to. It's the only one that made sense to message to it. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of relatively straightforward in that sense. And then there were, ones that had 4 or 5 because it was a complex market or they had a complex business. And so they really needed to be thoughtful about everyone that they were interacting with and how they were going to do that. So keep it in mind, this thing is not something to fill out like, at the row level. It's really at the column, and you can roll through and think through those or come back to a particular audience if you have questions about whether or not they're actually a buyer or if you need to be messaging to them or add someone you forgot about. I always hate being the guy you forgot about.
Which brings me to another point about when you're crafting this message, when you're making the we're filling this out, whatever form you use, but you need to know specific things before you can make this. And those things would be your landscape, what differentiates you from your competitors, your features and your benefits, your buyer needs. So all of those things need to be known and researched before you can make this infrastructure. And that's part of crafting the message. It allows you to pull from and really analyze each of those specific things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's why it's so important. You pulled out the, storytelling and science. We say this a lot. Storytelling, when we roll this out, when you think about messaging, you think about storytelling. How am I going to convince you to buy the product and how it's valuable? The reality is everything's a balance between the storytelling and the things that Sarah just mentioned, the science, in terms of the information that you went and got. So it's a real balance here. And the science infuses all of these decisions that you've now made in this messaging architecture around the positioning, around the value claims, around the competitive advantage. If you do the work ahead of time, if you do your, let's say you've got a consumer app and you're launching it, you don't have access to any customers. If you go to a park and ask random people what they think of your app, then at least, maybe you have 5 conversations with people you think could be interested in your app. That way you can at least make informed decisions on that. Some of our clients are billion-dollar clients that have huge buyer surveys that are like 3,000, 6,000 respondents. That's a lot of information. And it's great to be able to do that, but only if you are crunching the numbers and then you're leveraging it in this context. Either way you slice it, you got to do your homework. You got to do the science so that you're making the decisions and you're creating the messaging on the basis of who your buyer is, not what you think. So, we walked through the messaging architecture kind of in very rough formats. We'll also make available for you this kind of filled out version because it, again, makes it more concrete. You can kind of see exactly what we're talking about in terms of what goes into it. But you can see where we had audience 1, audience 2, audience 3. We kind of filled it out: learner value, admin value, buyer value. This one has an ed tech perspective because that's the analogy or the metaphor we've been using, whichever it is. But you can see how we made those claims. We put in the reasons to believe, personalization, live instruction, and between that high level positioning and those reasons to believe, we hit on the value proposition and competitive advantage that's specific to those buyers. So I hope you do look at this. It's to some degree, you can just straight up use it as a workshop. If you're interested, we'll work with you and give you some advice, maybe review or create one for you. Always happy to collaborate on these kinds of things. But hopefully this filled out one also kind of gives you some anchoring and was like, okay, it's not my business, but I get where they're going with this. And now I can start to think through those elements of that.
So that is that is a perfect segue, I feel like, to our marketing side eye, which would be manipulative messaging. What you don't want to do is create a message that makes your audience feel icky or gaslit or creates a problem for them. You want to be able to really get to the point of your messaging and your audience's actual pain points. My pet peeve in messaging is false exaggerations, false claims, over promising and misleading type of messaging. Like, so Ozempic and those semaglutide, those that medication and ideas are super popular right now, very in. I'm getting a lot of messaging for it. I started getting this one commercial that leads with a woman speaking, saying, "He told me that I let myself go." And I just started crying and crying. So I just decided I was going to buy Ozempic. And it was infuriating. I was like, what is this? Are you kidding me? At least give me a commercial that says, I wanted to feel healthier. I wanted to be able to go up the stairs without being out of breath. I wanted to fit into clothes. That seems more accurate than he told me I let myself go. That is a perfect example of manipulative marketing messaging.
Yeah.
In my view.
That's a great one. I mean, like just tugging on someone's emotions and vulnerability. I think it's an important point to, something to point out is like, they're really playing with your emotions. You really want to, when they start to nail on your emotions and like how you should be ashamed or like pulling out some of these like real trigger emotions, that's not cool. That's not cool. Okay. Mine's someone like yours, actually, not dissimilar. No wonder we collaborate so well. Although we shouldn't agree with each other too much, because that I think is also unhealthy for collaboration. There's no dynamic. Okay.
All right,
so mine is actually
contrary.
Okay. Yeah. Mine. No, it's not. I didn't even say it. Okay. So mine is actually binary framing, which sounds like an awesome. That's why I like it, because I get to sound awesome when I say that. I don't appreciate your binary framing. Basically, it's like
I'm using that. I'm using that one.
Really good salespeople will kind of really edge people towards a decision point, and they'll kind of frame. In sales methodology and training, they talk about that. They talk about framing the decision. Like you just went through this entire exercise of rolling out messaging that frames the world in which someone would buy your product. What I don't like is when you create this false binary or false dilemma between two decisions that they might make. So you could say, if you do this thing, then you're inherently a good person. The other decision will lead you towards, self-destructive, behaviors and tendencies. You're going to live unhappy. You're going to get a lot of pimples. No one's going to like you. And so it's like this false dilemma. First of all, it's often very extreme and often very ridiculous, but it's also unfair because
people don't think that their audience can see through that type of messaging.
Yeah, a lot of times, it's blatant when people are doing, but I think more importantly, it's collapsing all of the possible decisions that someone could make. Apple, in a couple of markets, I don't know how many markets they did this in, but Apple rolled out a iPhone buyback program recently, and the decision that they presented with buyers was that if you got the new iPhone, you got the new bells and whistles, and it was very, very good for the environment. It was obviously at my house. I'm like doing the recycling, and Apple walks in, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna love this new iPhone." But it's like it's really good for the environment. This is I'm boiling it down. It was sophisticated messaging. Don't get me wrong, beautiful. I love Apple, but they said, "Oh, it's good for the environment." If you hold on to if you throw your iPhone, your old iPhone away, then you're really, throwing batteries into landfills and plastic into the mouths of like birds. And, I believe in environmental messaging, and I believe in good causes around that, but this is not a good cause. This is get an iPhone, turn in your old one. You're going to be an amazing person and an eco warrior. If you don't do it, you've just destroyed the environment even more so than you did last week. What's crazy about that is the most environmentally sound decision you could make is to keep your iPhone and do neither of those two things. Like, I don't want a new iPhone. I don't want to give you my iPhone. I just want to keep this one and save the environment. And so that's what I'm like. Don't frame me into a situation in which I have to make a decision between two things that aren't real, or in some way collapse that decision making. So binary frameworks. I hate it when I hear messaging that are based on that. This is fun. I like that. So this was messaging side eye.
Well, something that in my messaging side eye, a lot of things I've noticed are especially when it comes to exaggerated claims, the use of AI. Like there's so many beauty products and all kinds of especially geared towards femininity, that makes it seem like if you use our product, you'll be beautiful, and they'll show examples, or they'll show somebody using it, and then it's just regular mascara, but when you put it on, this eye looks like you have fake lashes. And a lot of AI is able to make that happen, or wrinkle creams, and then half the face is beautiful and no wrinkles or blemishes or lines at all, and the other half it's like Snow White witch who brings with the apple. It's like, really? And you see that a lot on ads at the end of articles and stuff like that, or detoxifying yourself, and it shows you like the foot pads where you can detox using these foot pads you put on your feet overnight, and then just horrible, disgusting things. Like it's all brown and gross.
Dark.
When you actually get the product, it's like, what has just happened, and what have I just spent my money on? And a lot of people have spent so much money on these products that just lie to you, and that really, really bothers me, because I've also believed it and done it. And I mean, not so much anymore, but especially when I was younger. But
I turned in my iPhone last week, so if it's any kind of. The other thing is that my face is completely AI generated. I was like, Midjourney, please do better. Like, you can't. This is it for you. This is the best AI could do. All right, folks, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us and spending this time. If you have any questions about any of the things that we talked about today, or if you have some make it make sense questions, feel free to submit it to the email link below. And also, as always, we're here to collaborate with you on any go-to-market questions or strategy that you're putting together today. If you enjoyed this session, we very much hope that you like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Yeah, but do all the YouTubey things.
Do them.
The YouTubey things.
Yes. If you like, subscribe, comment, or share, you will be following us. If you don't like, subscribe, comment, or share. You're going to be lonely. You're not going to know how to
Bad
do
for
any
the
product
environment.
marketing, and
And
you'll be
you'll be
bad for the
wrinkly.
environment. Yeah. Wow. 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 All right. Bye.